All right. Just make sure I'm live all the places I wanted to be live. Beautiful. Cool. So, what's up, everybody? And what's up, family? And for those of you guys joining me now live or that will be joining me later, I'd love to hear your voices out there. Just comment in the box. Let me know you're out there. And I'm streaming on a bunch of channels, but I can see your comments wherever they're coming from, and I appreciate your spending some time with me. So obviously, we're in a an interesting place, certainly in America's near term and long term future, and with a lot of the different things happening around the world. And I've consulted a lot of people on a lot of different things throughout the years. I mean, I've been doing transformational healing work now for 22 years, 18 years working with people. So I've had the chance of working with thousands, tens of thousands of people, and I've seen people and who are living out of their cars and supporting them there, and also people who are earning billions of dollars and supporting them there as well. And so I've gotten a pretty spectacular view on the different challenges that human beings face. And obviously, we are in some really interesting times in our history and different places around the world where violence is and the way that governments are acting. And I thought it would be interesting to have a conversation about all that from a more spiritual perspective. And I promise that spiritual doesn't mean that it won't be grounded or have some really practical application. I simply mean spiritual is just like this thing that we call evolution, how humanity is evolving. Why is it that when people look at the same thing, they come up with completely different solutions or have different experiences with it? And I think that's worth playing with and exploring today, because I think for however this election you wanted to turn out and whatever your perspectives are, I leave you to your own judgments about stuff like that. I don't want to get into a whole political mess here, and please don't comment political stuff over here or what you believe. It never goes anywhere. You're not convincing anybody, and I don't need convincing, and nobody else does, of your points of view. But I do think it's important for us to look at more holistically, where how do we come together in this world, even if we have a political divide or if we don't agree on things. And I think part of that is really understanding where people come from. Like, why do we make the choices that we make? Why do we have certain discourse in one part of the planet? Why do we struggle so much with understanding why people have come to different conclusions than us, looking at the very same thing? And obviously, a lot of that comes from our upbringing, from the culture we were brought up into, religions that we were part of or are part of, and how our moral compass was set. And I believe that a lot of people think that there is this like altruistic moral compass that all of humanity is set. But I have lived my life in about three cultures so far, a great part of my life. And that's being Russian, Israeli, and American culture, and also could say Jewish culture, and different things like that. And I could tell you that the morals are not the same across even those cultures. Nevertheless, an Indian culture or an African culture and what their morals are set to. And so we need to understand first and foremost that morality is a man-made thing, right? There are certain, applicable truths, I guess, that we can kind of argue over, but this world wasn't born with morality. This is something that humanity has had to learn and adjust. And certainly there can be some things that seem really obvious, like the moral fabric that we should be living inside of. And I would say that most of us have never had to experience certain things in our lives. If you've never been starving to death, for example, there is a certain biological and spiritual thing that happens to the body when it's underserved with food, that if you've never had that experience, you don't even know that your body could do that. And you don't know what your psychology would be like or your moral compass would turn into if you were starving. Would you steal? Would you kill? Would you do those things in that situation? And I don't know the answer to that. It's something that you could be curious about. If you, oftentimes we look at people in power and we think, how are they doing those things? Well, I personally don't know what it's like to have billions of dollars in the bank where I don't have to think about those things. And I certainly have never been in a position where every idea I have for 40 or 50 years, everyone has said yes to because they deem that I'm a person in power. And I don't know what that does to a person's psychology. And given by our history and our culture and authoritarian nature of kings and queens and people in power, it would seem that when a person has not heard no in their lives or has not heard no for a very, very long time, obviously it shapes the way that they think about themselves and about reality, and they may have a completely different discourse. But at the same time, for example, like people who were born into wealth, they don't have conversations about being poor. They don't have conversations about struggle around money. And so they don't attract those circumstances to them. It's just not in their field. And while, most of the population that struggles and suffers around these things is going to have a really different moral compass. And so, we all say don't judge a book by its cover, but we all know the truth is we're all judgmental when it comes down to things. And we like to think that we're not judgmental or we have these moral compasses. But the reality is, like, judgment is a really important part of being a human being. When I walk across the street, a part of me needs to be able to judge the speed of that car and whether I can make it across the street safely. A part of me needs to judge whether a door is pushes or pulls. And if you've ever pulled the door when it said push or pushed the door when it said pull, it's a little bit of for a small fraction of time, it shocks you a little bit because the judgment and expectation of your mind was not fulfilled. And so we're all living in this reality where we are very sure that the experience that we're having between our left and our right brain is the right experience. And part of that is just self-preservation because, our ego needs to decide that there's this kind of collective reality, which doesn't really exist. And that there's certain agreements that we make, which can be beneficial at times, but can also have some harrowing effects as we are seeing at different scales and different levels of society. So I kind of just want a blanket statement that with, you don't have to take anything I'm saying here as truth, but I want to provide at least a context for having a conversation from a point of view of not telling you what's true, but just getting curious about your own experience. Because that's pretty much what I spent my whole life in the last 22 years is just being curious about my experience. It has been a long time since I have held any singular belief really steady for a long period of time. I'm always like, I am where I am and I'm not where I'm not with my belief systems. I come to certain experiences and realizations in my life, but the moment I have that realization, I don't treat it very heavy. I let it go. In my younger years, when I used to have big transformative experiences, I'd be like, oh my God, I found this truth. And I would try to hold on to it and have it be part of my life. But I just found what the Buddhists have been telling us forever, whether you crave or avert something in your life. So if you're having a transformation, for example, that can become your next craving. And so we have this line that we'd say, today's transformation becomes tomorrow's ego trip. And it will, that transformation will just continue the cycle of suffering for you. And so this conversation is about how do we suffer less, both in our interpersonal experience and as on the societal level. And I think the first thing that took me a very long time to get to in my own understanding, my own experiences, because it wasn't until I started doing a lot of this work interpersonally that I had this realization. I was like, wow, everyone is dealing with this. And I shared a lot. And I had a friend reach out to me today who I actually haven't spoken to in quite some time, who is really feeling the pain of what happened in our country yesterday and is responding from a place of fear. And who am I to tell that person that they shouldn't be responding from a place of fear? Like, I can't reassure them that everything is going to be hunky-dory. I don't know what's going to happen. None of us know what's going to happen. We all make choices, and then our ego does backflips and contorts itself to fill in the blanks of why we're rationalizing that thing is true. I'm as guilty as that as anybody. I think I just have I've done enough work to just keep an eye on that and make sure that I'm always checking what is speaking when I'm speaking. Even if I have a client who's paid me a lot of money, I got to check myself all the time. Am I speaking because I'm really present with this individual? I'm feeling their system. I have an understanding of the context that they're living in and what I'm going to offer here, while not the truth, is going to support this human being. Or is a part of me, even if not all of me, is saying this to look a certain way in the eyes of this person, where I'm like looked at as a teacher or something like that. And I check that often because it's very easy to slip into those places. And our society reaffirms us all the time. They like, you got to choose your sides. You got to play this chess match. And so like, it doesn't work, And so a really good teacher, if you ever want to like know how to stack a teacher up, whether they're valuable to be around, it's very simple. A good teacher does not tell you what to see. Mm-mm. A good teacher simply shows you where to look. They just point at it. Look over there. Tell me what you see. And then you get to reveal to yourself, which is why we call it self-realization. What are you noticing over there? And so when we all look at the same thing, it's upon all of us to do that work. Now, what teachers therefore is to kind of guide you is like, did your ego say that? Did your conditioning say that? Did some aspect of yourself that's trauma informed say that? Or are you really curious in this moment? And it's important to remember that children seem very happy to adults, and it's because their system still has open curiosity. They're living in a state of open curiosity. Most adults who are very unhappy, who are then telling people how to live their lives, even though they haven't learned how to live a happy life, from that perspective, have concluded everything a very, very long time ago and are no longer living in a state of curiosity. And so when the curiosity disappears, along with it, so does the joy. And you can call it stoicism or being a realist or whatever it is that you want to call it, and however you rationalize it is fine with me. But the point is that without curiosity, we stop evolving, we procrastinate, we dig our heels in, and we become pretty tribal about our beliefs. And then we got to plant our flag, and then life becomes about survival. And this has been going on, certainly not in this generation, but for many thousands of years, and has reared its head as authoritarianism, as totalitarianism, as warfare. And so here's the bottom line that I've kind of come to: a certain type of truth is that everybody on this planet and every piece of consciousness, whether it's an animal, humans are certainly animals too, but I'm saying more wildlife, plant life, call it what you will, there's a primary parameter under which we all guide our lives and our consciousness, and it's one thing and one thing only, and that's we want safety. Safety is the primary focus of every living being on this planet. Okay? Safety. Now, I think the next important part here is to talk about what is safety and to redefine it in the lexicon, because I'm not talking about living inside of your house and having walls around you, or even food, or even financial safety. And those can certainly all play a role, but those are all external factors that people use to give themselves the illusion of safety that they don't have. There is a reason why a billionaire doesn't stop making more money, because the part that doesn't feel safe doesn't get satiated when a person has a bigger bank account. That doesn't happen. Again, I've worked with plenty of people to see this firsthand. Oftentimes people who have a lot of money are actually living in greater fear because they're living at the place where the loss of that, quote, safety is really, really scary. We see this a lot with athletes. You see this a lot with Hollywood actors. And I could talk a lot about how those people are successful because of their trauma, not because they've somehow fixed or alleviated or healed from that trauma. It's just that we have a world that will provide financial gain for certain type of systems that deal with trauma in a certain type of way. And then we applaud that, like this person has done something monumental, when in fact we're looking at just trauma unfolding. Will Smith comes to mind as a person who we got to see publicly what his trauma unfortunately did, but it's also why he makes so much damn money, right? So just come back to this kind of idea of safety, right? Like, so everybody is trying to play this game of what feels safe to them. And so whatever political spectrum or governance you adopt, or religion, or spiritual communities you're part of, whatever it is, it's like that's your version of trying to make yourself feel safer. oftentimes, even if it's serving other people, which might feel like I'm trying to make these people feel safer, is really just a self-serving act to try to make us feel safer. And that's totally fine. Because I tell my clients all the time, I tell them the most selfless thing you can do, selfless, is be wildly selfish about your personal healing. Like, you want to repair this world. I don't think there's a person here, if I ask them, and I don't care what side of the spectrum of anything you're on, and I said, do you want to serve people on this planet? Yes. Do you want to make this place a more peaceful place? Yes. Do you want more unity and safe bonding with people? Yes. Like, who's going to say no to that? Like, we strive to want to serve this humanity. I think it's really baked into our mechanism. Like, it's just this driving force inside of us, this nature inside of us to serve. And so if you're down with that, if you understand that, if you feel like that's true for you, then understand that every choice everyone is making all the time is just based on this primary focus of trying to add safety to their lives. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. So imagine an extremely Catholic man, shouldn't be too hard. And this Catholic man, from a very young age, is taught that being a homosexual or gay or anything like that is just totally repugnant and sinful, to the point where they are simply not even acceptable to their Lord and Savior in some particular way. Again, I didn't grow up in that culture, but I'm imagining what it might have been like. And then around 13 or 14 years old, this boy finds out that he's got these funny feelings inside, and men start looking very attractive to him. Now, of course, he's grown up in a culture now for 13 or 14 years that told him that it's apprehensible to have even those sensations in your body. And so naturally, from a point of view of pure survival and safety, that individual will turn away from that aspect of themselves. That part will be put on an island and will be treated like a POW, like a prisoner of war within themselves. Then what will happen is that person will pick up the flag of being violent towards the homosexual community in any particular way. And they will do that simply because this feeling they have in their body, this feeling of not feeling safe in their own culture, has them turn away and avoid so deeply this aspect of themselves that they can no longer even be with it in society. And so they will often become the loudest voices about getting rid of or taking rights away from, the homosexual community in this particular metaphor. And then we will come to find out that that person is incredibly gay, and then doing, like they're cheating on their wife with men, or like promiscuity and with men, or whatever it is, right? So like that happens a lot. And it's not irony that's creating that, it's trauma that's creating that. So I use that because it's kind of a more dramatic example, but imagine that that's happening to everybody on the planet at some scale or level, with an experience that they had growing up that challenged their feeling of survival. And so when survival is at stake, we humans can adapt very quickly, as we see time and time again, right? That's what we do well. We adapt extremely well. So we adapt to being whatever we need to be in order to survive, because when you're young, losing safe bonding with your caregiver or parent is your survival is at stake. It's why when parents threaten children or they punish them with anything that makes that bond weak, with their attachment being weak, the child will choose survival. They will override their own feelings and intuition and just fall in line. This is reaffirmed when we go to school and colleges and pretty much every level of academia, or where there's an authority figure that tells you, here's the narrative, state sanctioned narrative. Give that back to me. Tell me that narrative. Oh, you don't know the narrative? Okay, you get a bad grade. You're going to be put in remedial classes. Again, removing people from safe bonding. And then what does a child do? Well, I need to survive. Let me fall in line. Let me start saying this narrative back to this authority figure, because it's the only way I'm going to be looked at as good enough. And so we get this misinterpretation in our brain that we need to do something in order to have connection. We need to do something to get love. We need to do something in order to feel worthy. And this is probably the biggest virus on our planet right now, right? This brain virus. And so this is the matrix of our mind. This is what the ego can do. And this is what systems of power, whether they're doing it on purpose or not, take advantage of and wreck our psychology. And then you end up with, 70% of people having ADHD and depression and all the rest of it. Because when you move away from safe bonding, when you move away from your intuition, naturally, you are going to be a depressed human being because you are removing yourself and moving away from your true nature. And the further away you move from your true nature, the more disassociated and dysregulated that you feel. And then you have, a political movement. And if it feels like that political movement is going to generate more safety for you in this world, then you will abide by that political movement, whether you agree with what's happening there or not. Hence, evangelicals and all these people that don't understand why someone like Trump, who seems to be not so godly, is just adored by these godly people, so to speak, right? And so again, I don't want to get into all the rambles about that, but again, I'm trying to build a context here about what's going on for people and why they make the choices they make. So what there is to take away from all this is that safety cannot be acquired. Try it out. How many people do you know that have tried this? How many people do you know that have built magnificent businesses, or whatever it is, or have a lot of money? They have the house, they have the kids, they have all the things, and they're fucking miserable. I'm telling you, I've worked with tens of thousands of people. Safety, well-being, safe bonding. I can make a laundry list of things here. Are not things that you can acquire in your external reality. You can have all the resources in the world. You cannot acquire safety. And we have been trying to do that now for thousands of years. And it's, as you can tell, failing because we're missing the most important thing, is that when all this attention, you have this awareness can be put anywhere you want. It could go down to an atom in your body or a cell. Pay attention to that and really feel it. You can put your awareness in the front of your big toe and really get the experience of your big toe. For example, your big toe is more weary than your other toes because you've hit it on many things throughout the years, and so it's actually a little bit tighter at the front, and it's having a really different experience than the pinky toe on the other end of the foot or the toes in the middle. It has its own ideas about life and culture and what the world is because its perspective has always been down there, and it gets stubbed from time to time. Like, this is so weird to talk about, but it's true. If there's a human being imagining it, there is a human being doing it. This is what's kind of really interesting and super cool about humanity as a whole, is that we have this unbelievable mind that literally has no bounds in its ability to imagine and create, and we can bring pretty much any story to life. And it's our right to do so. So back to this idea of safety. If you can't acquire safety, then what is, in quotes here, what's the answer? What's the answer if we can't acquire it? Well, I would say that one of the biggest lies that's been perpetrated on humanity is that you need some sort of medium to have a conversation or to build a relationship with God. And maybe there was a purpose and time where mediation was needed, but I have found that to be unbelievably untrue. And this is coming from a person who had my trauma created a real big rupture with my relationship to the divine, universe, call it whatever you call it. Again, irrelevant to me, how you choose to connect to the all. But that connection, in my opinion, is a very real thing, one that can be directly experienced. And I teach people how to get there all the time without having to use a single ounce of energy or thought to do so. But that connection lives within the moment you turn inside. So just the same way we can bring our awareness and pay attention to all this stuff out here, my point is that you can turn within and start paying attention to everything that's happening in here. And in here, weirdly enough, is way more interesting than out there. I always say that there's no boredom when it comes to awareness. Once you learn how to function in the realm of awareness, not mind awareness, very different things, there's never a moment to be bored. Standing online can be the most delicious experience ever, because what you realize is it's like the universe is unfolding within you, is arising within you. Life is literally arising from nothingness within you. So there's always something going on. There's always some party inside. And so when we have conditioned our society to be externally focused, not only are we completely disconnected from our own divine intelligence, but we are being trained to turn away from discomfort in our body and then enact something into this reality in an effort to try to create or generate safety. So whether that's joining a political movement or becoming violent against another human being, even murderous, even the worst things that are happening, terrorist attacks or stuff like that, is done. I mean, just check it out in your own experience. Is that being done from a person who is lacking safety? Could you track back pretty much all human action that seems intense or insane to a lack of safety? I'm telling you, when you start listening to this, you're going to pick it up in people's communication everywhere. We have, as Tyler Durden said, evacuation plans inside of airplanes that are 30,000 feet up in the air. It's there for just the illusion of safety. It's to calm your nervous system the fuck down, basically. So what do you get when an entire society's nervous system and the collective body and the energetic signaling that we're sending to each other all the time is that the collective is stuck in a fight or flight response or a freeze response? Because from what I can tell and the work that I've done with people, I've yet to meet anybody who's not stuck in that response, looping in this fight or flight response. Now, I used to have a mentor that used to say, when you stand in shit long enough, it stops smelling. It's the same thing with your nervous system. When you've been in fight or flight for so long, you don't even know you're there anymore. There's no contrast anymore. You don't even remember a life before that. It's always been about survival. It's always been about just making it, just getting enough, just getting by, not really feeling connected. Even if you have a lot of friends, you still kind of feel this loneliness inside. And what we see in this world and these uprisings are the amalgamations that come out of this trauma response that's not being dealt with. And so wherever you are and what's happened over the last 24 hours in this country, over the last 9 years, 10 years, 1,000 years in this world, thousands of years in this world, right? This is what's going on. If you want to repair, if you truly care about this world becoming a more peaceful place, a compassionate place, a place with safe bonding, all that juicy, yummy stuff that I think we all deserve, not because we've done anything, but simply because we exist. So we deserve those things. Then understand this is the original language that everything speaks in this universe is energy. We are not somehow devoid of that. There is a reason that a mother intuitively knows what a baby needs before the baby ever utters a word of logic or anything else. If you have an upset child that's 1 or 2 years old and they're crying, and I have a almost 2-year-old at home and almost a 6-year-old at home. When they're upset, and this is true for when you're an adult too, there's no rational conversation to be had. I'm not like, oh, sweetheart, you're upset. Let me explain to you why you shouldn't be upset right now. Does that work? Has that ever worked for anybody? Of course not. It's an insane idea. Because what you're looking at is a body in dysregulation, a nervous system that's upregulated. What does that nervous system need? What does that dysregulation need? It needs calm. It needs regulation. And what the parent-child relationship or the caregiver-child relationship is supposed to provide is that when the child is dysregulated, the regulated adult is supposed to hold them. And the nervous system and the energy teaches the child how to regulate their nervous system in that moment of dysregulation. And that's really the training that we're supposed to be giving children is, oh, you're dysregulated. Here's how we regulate in this situation. The next time that situation happens, the child expands and has more capacity before they become dysregulated. In the 6 years I've had my child, and I'm not saying he doesn't have his moments, but what people describe as tantrums, like all-out tantrums, I've seen that with my child twice. And once was during Halloween when I took candy away from him, like many years ago. But I haven't seen him do it. I haven't seen him have a full-on tantrum in 3, maybe 4 years. And I believe, and again, just my story, you don't have to take it, that the reason for that is he knows he doesn't have to go to that level to get my presence and for me to offer him regulation for my system. Now, I've had to teach my system how to self-regulate itself, and I learned that by being dysregulated and then sitting with other people who had regulated nervous systems while I was going through that. And all we're doing, and this is all we teach in the community, and you have my little QR code down there that you can scan so you can learn how to do this stuff for yourself, because this is how we have a more peaceful planet, is that this, when you mimic that relationship that a caregiver would have with a child, all the repair that people want, all the stuff that they're doing with therapists and never really getting anywhere, what we're doing with plant medicine work, it's just to learn how to regulate our nervous systems. Because when we're dysregulated, we're fearful, we're afraid, sometimes it's terror or grief or sadness. And we have not learned how to be with those things because nobody's been with us in a safe, regulated way while those things were happening. And so we don't learn by understanding how to regulate ourselves. Like I can tell you, regulate your nervous system. You're like, I get it. I should be regulating my nervous system. We'll give you no access to regulating your nervous system. Zero. Zilch. Reading another book on regulating your nervous system will help you this much. Zero. Zilch on how to regulate your nervous system. It simply does not work that way. Regulation comes from one simple thing. It comes from a direct experience with another person. That's it. It happens in safe bonding. And I really had to come to terms with that I literally cannot heal myself. I actually need other people when I'm dysregulated to help me regulate and teach my nervous system how to regulate. Now, I have been doing this stuff for 8 years, day in, day out. And currently, both in my psychology, my emotions, my energetics, as well as the things that are happening in my life, which are responding to my output signal in my body. What happens when you're dysregulated? Your reality that you're witnessing is dysregulated. Everything mimics everything else. So when you're in scarcity and fear, reality mimics that. It shows up more scarce and more fearful. And it's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to reveal a truth to you. This can be healed. This can be healed. This can be healed. It just keeps looping so you can have opportunities to heal it. So the safety that I think most people want, that they believe there's some leader out there or some law that's going to be changed, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. If it works that way, it would have worked a long time ago. Because even the intention of the laws that are being created or the people that are running for office are running from this energy. And the energy we create anything with, including our food supply, the intention that's around that, all of us are feeling the energy of the intention in the food supply. I mean, it sounds like kind of crazy, but we all know it's true. Like when you go home and the meal tastes great, what do we say? People say, oh, is it good because it was a seasoning? No, we say it was made with love. Right? Common saying. It was made with love. What are we saying? It was saying the intention, the energy that was put into this food was my mother's loving energy, and I can taste that. I can feel it in my body. When you watch sporting events, they say, uh-oh, the momentum's shifted now. It's gone to the other team. The announcers are saying the energy has moved from this team to that team. That's all they're saying. We talk about it all the time in all these ways. Energy, energy, energy. And then you talk about people energy. They're like, you're so weird. But we know that everything in this universe is made up of photons and particles. Energy. What do you think? You're somehow not made out of energy? And so the language that we have forgotten, or we are being trained or conditioned to forget, is this language of energy. And this language is directly experienced in real time. And so when you're having fear or terror, or you're scared of what's happening in the world, all that's pointing at inside of your system is a part that never learned how to regulate itself. And as long as you continue to do all the things that people do and look outside of themselves and avoid it by trying to create a world, a moat, a castle, guns, weapons, war, all these things around it, to try to pretend like those things are going to make you feel safe, it will have you for the rest of your life. You will not have it. And you will not find peace, and you will not find solace. And you will see that your reality continues to give you experiences that you are trying to avoid, not in order to hurt you, but in order to help you heal. And that's a primary understanding, is that regardless of what we're seeing in the news or on the planet or what you think is happening, the source behind it is a loving source. I found it hilarious this morning when I checked the news feed real quick, and people who are pro-Trump said, hey, this is a godly event. And people who are against Trump clearly said, oh, this is man chose this. God didn't choose this. Okay, well, if you believe in God, how are you separating what? Because your side didn't win, so this is not a godly experience? How can you create a line if you're saying that I'm a godly individual who believes that there's a one source and everything is sourced from this, and every atom and speckle and quantum quartz on this planet is made from this divine loving source, but not this thing here? Every war, every death, every financial hardship, every pain in your life, behind the veil of what your ego believes is happening, is a source of love. How many times have people had the worst challenges in their life? And then 10 years on, if that thing hadn't happened for them, they wouldn't have been realigned to their purpose, to making some huge change on the planet. Nelson Mandela comes to mind. It is the way of things until it is not, because what is hard today will become easy tomorrow. And until we understand that souls that come down to this planet, and this is going to be a tough one to hear, will be it Trump or Hitler or any other dictator or person that's created mass suffering on this planet, that soul had to choose that job. It's a big job to choose when you have that much energy coming at you. And I want to offer that after every major world event like that, we have seen a spontaneous evolution and growth in consciousness. For example, after World War II, United States went from like Stepford Wives and Puritan culture to the acid head movement in about 10 years. I would say that's a pretty fucking big leap. And I think COVID, and I've said this many times, and this is not just coming from me, but things like COVID or things like this, these political movements or wars that you're seeing on the planet all continue to play a role like this. And part of that is just that, even if you think the storms that hit the Gulf Coast this year were man-made, okay, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I have no idea. But even the idea, if man is making that storm, there's some, gadget or machine that we don't know of that's making that storm. The idea that planted to make that machine to control the weather is still natural and coming from that same source. And so it doesn't really matter which path we take. It's like we're all primed to face towards light. You can put cement on the ground, but eventually it cracks. And what do the plants do? They go through the crack and they find the light. Everything orients to light. This whole world can be shrouded in darkness, but humanity will continue to look towards the light. And I want to just leave you with that message of hope, of whatever you think is happening. Like, this world doesn't need more empathy, it needs more compassion. Excuse me. And you could be that person that learns how to be compassionate. And you cannot be compassionate towards other people when you're not compassionate towards yourself. Turning inside is a lesson how to surrender and be compassionate to whatever is arising within you. And as you heal what's arising within you, it becomes natural then to be compassionate when you see that same thing in the world. I used to hate when I saw angry people in the world. Now it doesn't bother me because I hated my own anger. But as that congealed, and I took that off of its island and I brought it back into the whole, because I spent many years trying to get rid of it. It never worked. I just had shame and guilt and blamed myself every time I would show up. Now it arises within me. I just let it move through. I let it be. And so when I see angry people in the world, it doesn't have that triggering effect anymore. And it's not because I was like, I should stop being angry at angry people. I need to stop being angry in here. I need to be compassionate towards myself, and then it's obvious how to be compassionate to other people. So that's what I want to leave you with, guys, because we are where we are. We're not where we're not. If you believe in God, there's nothing else. It's a source of love, even if in this moment right now, from your egoic perspective, it seems like this is not a loving experience. I promise you, in time, truth always reveals itself. So love you all. Take your time. Be patient with yourself. Have a lot of grace for yourself and other members of our human family. We're all stumbling through the dark like little children trying to figure out this thing. So A lot of love for all of you guys on your journey.